12-year-old Emily Bennett had never seen the colors of a sunrise, never watched birds fly across a sky, and never once locked eyes with her mother. Blind since birth, her world had always been shaped by texture, sound, and scent. But while she couldn't see light, she carried something radiant inside her, a quiet strength, a hopeful heart, and a curiosity that never faded. For years, her parents had done everything they could to help her navigate the world safely. At first, it was her mother's guiding hand. Then it became a white cane, tapping in front of her like a cautious whisper. But as Emily grew more independent, her parents knew she needed more, something that could move with her, understand her, and react faster than human hands ever could. That's when the name Max first entered their lives. Max was no ordinary dog. He was a golden retriever, trained for nearly 2 years by one of the country's top guide dog programs. His trainers had seen something special in him from the start. He was gentle, alert, loyal to the core, and remarkably intuitive. Max wasn't just trained to follow commands. He was trained to think, to judge, to protect. Emily had been on the waiting list for a guide dog for over a year. When the call came that Max had been selected for her, it felt like a dream. She could barely sleep the night before they were scheduled to meet. She didn't know what he'd look like. She didn't even know what he'd sound like. But something in her heart told her that everything was about to change. The first meeting took place at the local training center. Emily, holding tightly to her father's arm, walked nervously into the room. And then she heard it, the soft patting of paws on tile, a warm breath, a gentle nudge. She knelt down slowly, heart pounding. Max placed his head into her hands, like he knew exactly what she needed. That moment was more than a meeting. It was a connection, a silent agreement. Emily smiled, a real, deep, open smile, and whispered, "Hi, Max." From that day forward, they were inseparable. In the following weeks, Emily began learning how to walk with Max, how to give him verbal cues, how to read his subtle movements. She learned that a slight shift in the harness meant a change in direction. A pause meant danger. A tug meant it was time to move. Max seemed to understand her even when she didn't say a word. He picked up on her breathing when she was nervous. He stood closer when she was unsure. He slept near her bed, rising every time she stirred in the night. Her parents watched in awe. They had hoped for a helper. What Emily got was a guardian. The first time Emily walked down the sidewalk by herself, just her and Max, was a milestone. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Her father stood on the porch holding his breath. But Max was steady. He guided her past mailboxes, parked bicycles, uneven cracks in the pavement. Emily's face lit up with a mix of fear and joy. She felt like she was flying. It wasn't just mobility that Max gave her. It was freedom. And with every passing day, Emily's confidence grew. At school, Max stayed by her desk. In the cafeteria, he helped her find her tray. Students, once unsure how to interact with her, now had something to talk about. They asked questions about Max. They admired how he followed commands. And slowly, Emily stopped feeling invisible. But Max's true gift was still waiting to be revealed. In a few short days, he would face a test that no training could prepare him for. A moment when instinct would matter more than obedience. A decision that would come in seconds and change everything. And in that moment, the world would learn that Max wasn't just a guide dog. He was a hero. Emily never thought she would enjoy walking alone. But with Max beside her, every step felt safe, almost magical. What used to be scary became second nature. She could now walk confidently through the school gates, cross streets with calm precision, and navigate the school corridors, trusting Max with her every move. But their connection went far beyond training. It wasn't just about commands or rehearsed routines. There was something deeper, an invisible thread of understanding between girl and dog. At school, Max became somewhat of a celebrity. Teachers greeted him each morning with a smile, and students often tried to sneak him treats, though Emily politely reminded them he was working. He never barked, never got distracted, never left her side. Max was focused, always listening, always alert. While students laughed and shuffled through the halls, Max walked beside Emily with quiet purpose. During lunch breaks, Emily would sit on the same bench in the school courtyard. She'd rest her hand gently on Max's head, running her fingers through his golden fur. It was her way of thanking him, even when no words were spoken. Sometimes, she'd talk to him in whispers about the funny things that happened in class, or how a boy in her science group made her laugh. Max always listened. What made Max remarkable wasn't just his behavior, it was his timing. He knew when to pause before a corner, when to slow down on slippery ground, and when to block Emily's path if something felt wrong. He had this strange ability to sense discomfort or hesitation. Before Emily even realized she was tense, his reactions weren't robotic, they were thoughtful. Her parents noticed it too. One evening, while walking home from the neighborhood park, Emily nearly stepped into a puddle on the edge of the sidewalk. It wasn't deep or dangerous, but Max stopped anyway. When Emily's mother asked why he had paused, Emily just smiled and said, "Because he knows I don't like getting my shoes wet." Trust, that was what it all came down to. Emily trusted Max in a way she didn't trust anyone else, not because she didn't love her parents or teachers, but because Max had never once failed her. He was consistent, calm, and somehow always one step ahead. She didn't need to see the world to feel safe in it. She just needed to feel Max's steady presence by her side. But one Thursday afternoon, that trust would be put to the ultimate test. The day began like any other. School ended with the bell ringing and kids spilling out into the hallway. Emily packed her bag, slipped on her jacket, and grabbed Max's harness. As usual, he stood still until she was ready. Then, with a quiet command, "Forward," they began their walk home. The route they took never changed. It was the safest one her parents had mapped out with the help of the school and the city's mobility services. It had well-marked crossings, pedestrian signals, and minimal traffic. Emily had memorized every turn, every crack in the sidewalk, every bump along the way. With Max, it was a flawless routine. But something was different that day, and Max could feel it. As they walked past the row of maple trees lining the third block, Max's ears twitched. He slowed down, not much, just slightly, but enough for Emily to notice. She asked softly, "Is everything okay, Max?" There was no answer, of course, just a gentle pause. They continued walking. The sun was bright. The birds were chirping. To anyone watching, it looked like just another peaceful afternoon. But Max's senses were already tuned to something that hadn't reached Emily yet. Something was ahead, something she couldn't hear, smell, or see. Something Max would soon have to face with nothing but instinct and courage. And in just a few minutes, he would make a split-second decision that would prove what Emily already knew deep down. Max wasn't just a guide, he was a guardian. The breeze that afternoon carried the soft scent of freshly cut grass. Children's laughter echoed in the distance, and a lawn sprinkler ticked rhythmically as Emily walked along her usual path. She smiled, humming quietly, with one hand on Max's harness and the other brushing against the fabric of her backpack. It was a moment of calm, a familiar walk with her trusted companion. The neighborhood was quiet, the sidewalks clean, and the route home was something Emily could now map entirely in her mind. She counted her steps the way she always did. Left at the corner with the mailbox, straight past the bakery with the warm, sugary scent, right at the lamppost where the sidewalk narrowed slightly. Max knew every inch. He had walked this path so many times that he didn't need reminders, and Emily had grown used to relying on his silent decisions. But that day, something was off. Max was moving slower than usual, not hesitating, but more cautious, his body just slightly more tense, his ears perked, as if listening to something Emily couldn't hear. Every few steps, his head tilted, like he was focusing on something distant. Emily noticed the change and whispered, "You okay, Max?" She ran her hand down his back. He didn't flinch, but he didn't relax either. A few more blocks, and they approached the last intersection before home. It was a wide crosswalk, one that Emily had navigated 100 times. There was a traffic light, a chirping pedestrian signal, and a painted path that crossed from the corner pharmacy to a small coffee shop. Emily always waited for the audible cue, the beep, that told her it was safe to cross. But Max always confirmed it first. They stopped at the curb. Emily felt Max shift slightly as he positioned himself in front of her, as he always did. She pressed the button on the pedestrian pole and waited for the familiar sound. Beep, 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 the signal began. It was time to cross. Emily gave the command she had given so many times before, forward. But Max didn't move. Emily blinked. Max, forward. Still nothing. He wasn't frozen but firmly grounded. His muscles were stiff. His head locked forward. And then she felt his body pushing ever so gently against her legs, as if telling her to stay back. And something else. Emily had never felt from him before. A low, vibrating growl. It wasn't loud, and it wasn't angry. But it was real. Emily's heart skipped. She froze. "What is it, Max?" she whispered. Her grip on the harness tightened. Her other hand instinctively reached forward into the empty air. Still, Max didn't move. Then she heard it, faint at first, a sound that didn't belong. It wasn't coming from the crosswalk or the traffic light. It was coming from somewhere just beyond, fast, heavy, and irregular. A strange mechanical rattle, like metal shaking, like tires skidding, like something coming too fast. The sound grew louder. There was no horn, no warning, just the roar of something heavy and out of control. Emily couldn't see it, but Max could hear it. He could feel it, and his instinct screamed danger. Emily took a step back without realizing it, holding Max tightly, and in the next second, the calm, ordinary day shattered into chaos. A truck out of control was about to enter the scene, and the only thing standing between Emily and disaster was Max. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the sound rushed closer, metal groaning, tires scraping against pavement, and the unmistakable roar of an engine that had lost control. Somewhere ahead of her, beyond her line of perception, something massive was coming fast, and Max knew. He didn't bark. He didn't panic. Instead, he braced himself, his body pressed firmly into Emily's legs, pushing her back just enough to stop her from stepping off the curb. His growl deepened, not from fear, but from instinct. His head remained still, ears locked forward, every muscle on edge. He was reading the world like a silent radar, and what he sensed was danger. And then just seconds later, the chaos arrived. A delivery truck, engine screaming, shot through the red light at the intersection. Without slowing down, the sound was deafening. It skidded past the crosswalk at an angle, veering slightly toward the curb Emily was just inches away from stepping onto. The front tire jumped the sidewalk, plowing over a garbage bin before smashing into a streetlight pole with a sickening metallic crunch. Everything happened in a blur. But for Emily, the world had slowed. She didn't see the truck, but she felt the ground shake beneath her. She heard the crash, the twisted metal, the splintering glass, and the gasps and screams from people nearby. For a full moment, Emily couldn't move. She stood frozen, still clutching Max's harness. Max didn't move either, not until the noise stopped. Only then did he slowly lower his stance, his breathing still sharp and fast. He looked up at Emily as if to check on her, then turned his head in the direction of the crash. Alert, protective, unshaken. People began rushing over. Someone shouted, "Is she okay?" That truck missed her by inches, another voice called out. "That dog." He stopped her. He didn't let her cross. A woman placed a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder and said, "Sweetheart, don't move. Are you hurt?" Emily, still trembling, shook her head. "No, I'm okay." "What happened?" The woman took a moment, her voice soft but shocked. "A truck. It came out of nowhere. It blew through the red light and hit the pole right where the crosswalk begins. If you'd stepped off the curb, it would've." She didn't finish the sentence. Emily slowly dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around Max. He was still tense, but he allowed her to hold him close. She buried her face in his fur, whispering words only he could hear. "Thank you, Max. Thank you." The crowd around them began to grow. Someone called the police. Another helped direct traffic away from the scene. The driver, who had leapt out of the truck, looked shaken but unharmed. He kept saying the same thing over and over. "The brakes, they failed. I couldn't stop." But amid all the voices, all the sirens and questions, there was only one moment everyone kept talking about. That the girl had been about to step forward, and the dog had stopped her. Max's decision hadn't come from a command. It hadn't been rehearsed. No training manual had told him exactly what to do when a truck lost control. It was instinct. Pure, Powerful, unwavering instinct. A guardian's heart wrapped in golden fur. And for Emily, that moment changed everything. She now knew beyond all doubt that Max didn't just follow her. He protected her. Even when she couldn't see the danger, he did. Sirens pierced the air as first responders arrived at the scene. Police cars, flashing red and blue, pulled up alongside the crashed truck. An ambulance followed, its medics quickly checking the driver, who was still visibly shaken but uninjured. As paramedics examined the scene, a small crowd formed on the sidewalk. Neighbors, shopkeepers, and passersby who had either witnessed the crash or arrived moments after. In the center of it all, Emily sat on the sidewalk beside Max, her arms still wrapped tightly around him. She wasn't crying, she was too stunned for that, but her body shook as adrenaline faded. Max remained still, calm and alert, occasionally shifting his eyes to the people around them. His job wasn't finished yet. A paramedic gently knelt beside Emily. "Sweetheart, are you okay? Were you hurt at all?" Emily slowly shook her head. "No. Max, he stopped me. He wouldn't let me cross." Her voice was quiet, but firm. There was no doubt in her tone, no confusion. One of the police officers glanced at the wrecked truck, and then at Emily and her dog. "That dog just saved your life," he said, his voice filled with awe. "If you'd stepped out when the light changed," Emily nodded slowly. "I gave the command. He wouldn't move." He knew, nearby, Emily's mother had just arrived, having received a frantic phone call from a neighbor who saw what happened. She rushed through the crowd, panic written across her face, until she saw Emily unharmed. Dropping to her knees, she wrapped her arms around her daughter and whispered, "Oh my God, you're okay, you're okay." Emily leaned into the embrace. "Mom, Max saved me. I didn't see it, but he did." He felt something was wrong. Tears welled in her mother's eyes. She looked at Max, who sat quietly beside Emily like a silent guardian. "Thank you," she whispered to the dog, voice trembling. "Thank you for protecting my little girl." The next few hours passed in a blur. Statements were taken. Witnesses shared their accounts. The police confirmed that the truck's brakes had failed, a mechanical failure that caused the driver to lose control at the worst possible moment. And through all of it, Max never left Emily's side. That night, back home, Emily sat in her room quietly, stroking Max's fur as he rested beside her. The crash played over and over in her mind, not because she saw it, but because she heard it, felt it, and nearly became part of it. She whispered, "You knew something I didn't, Max. You felt it before it happened." Her voice cracked, but her words were filled with wonder. "I trusted you before, but now I trust you with everything." Her father stepped into the doorway. "You know, the neighbors are all talking about what Max did today. They're calling him a hero." Emily smiled faintly. "He doesn't care about that." "No, he doesn't." Her father agreed. "But we do." Later that evening, the local news aired a segment about the incident. The headline read, "Guide. Dog senses danger, saves blind girl from speeding truck." Clips from bystanders' phones showed the aftermath. Witnesses described Max's refusal to obey the command, his stance, and how he pushed Emily back just in time. It was the kind of story that made people pause their evening routine and pay attention. Calls began pouring into the Guide Dog Training Center, asking about Max. Reporters asked for interviews. Teachers at Emily's school began preparing a special recognition for her and Max, but Emily didn't care about the attention. All she cared about was the quiet heartbeat beside her, the loyal presence that had stood between her, and a moment that could have changed everything. She reached down and gently touched Max's head. "You're not just my guide, Max," she whispered. "You're my guardian angel." By the following morning, Max had become more than a local dog. He was now a symbol. The news story had gone viral overnight, with headlines describing his act as instinct beyond training and a heroic refusal. People from all over the country sent messages of admiration. Some offered to send treats or toys. Others shared their own stories of service animals who had changed their lives. But while the world celebrated Max, Emily remained humble. At school, things felt different. Students greeted her with more warmth, some walking up to say how brave she was. Others simply wanted to pet Max, who now wore a small ribbon around his collar given by the school's front office. Emily, shy as always, smiled and answered their questions, but she didn't try to stand out. She didn't feel like a hero. "He's the hero," she told her homeroom teacher, pointing to Max. The school principal arranged a special morning assembly to honor Max's bravery. Flyers were sent home to parents, and even local officials were invited. The stage was decorated with gold and blue balloons, and a banner read, "Celebrating Max, our guardian in fur." That morning, the gym was packed. Emily sat quietly in a chair on the stage with Max at her feet. He was calm, his head resting on his paws, eyes alert but relaxed, as if he didn't understand why everyone was looking at him. Or maybe he did and simply didn't care. The principal stepped up to the microphone. "Sometimes heroes don't wear capes," she began. "Sometimes they walk on for paws." Max reminded us this week what loyalty, instinct, and love can do. In a single moment, applause filled the room. A special certificate was presented to Max, with his name in large letters and a gold paw print seal at the bottom. The school even arranged for a custom bone-shaped tag that read Max, Hero, Dog, to be added to his collar. Then the principal turned to Emily. "We would also like to recognize Emily, whose calm spirit and trust in Max reminds us all how powerful the bond between human and animal can be." She handed Emily the microphone. For a moment, Emily froze. She had never spoken to such a large crowd before. Her fingers tightened slightly around Max's harness. He shifted beside her, gently nudging her hand with his nose. That was all she needed. Taking a small breath, Emily leaned forward. "I didn't know what was coming that day. I couldn't hear it. I couldn't see it. But Max did. He felt it before anyone else, and he stopped me." She paused. "I gave him a command, but he made a choice to protect me even if it meant disobeying. That's not just training, that's love." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. "I trust Max with my life, and he proved why." The room erupted in applause. Some teachers wiped away tears. Even students who barely knew Emily now looked at her with admiration. After the assembly, a local journalist approached her and asked for a quick interview. Emily hesitated at first, but then nodded. She simply said, "Max sees what I can't, and somehow, he always knows." The quote was printed the next morning under the headline, "Blind Girl Says Dog Always Knows." A story that's touching hearts everywhere. But for Emily, the attention wasn't what mattered. It was knowing that Max would still walk her home that afternoon. Same route, same pace, same gentle rhythm of paws on pavement. And he would still listen, not just with his ears, but with his heart. Because for Max, protecting Emily wasn't an act of heroism. It was simply who he was. Within days of the school assembly, Emily and Max's story had captured the nation's attention. What began as a local news segment quickly spread to national headlines, online articles, morning shows, and even radio hosts were all talking about the guide dog who said no and saved a life. The story struck a deep chord. It wasn't just about a dog preventing an accident, it was about trust, instinct, and the unspoken bond between a blind girl and her companion. People were moved by Max's courage and by Emily's quiet strength. The simplicity of their story made it powerful. Emily's parents were careful not to let the attention overwhelm her. But there was one invitation. They couldn't ignore a request from the producers of a national morning show. They wanted Emily and Max to appear live and share their story. At first, Emily hesitated. "Why would people want to hear me talk?" she asked. Her mother smiled. "Because your voice matters, and your story is helping people see the world differently, even the part they usually overlook." Max, as always, sat quietly beside her. His presence, calm and steady, was all the reassurance Emily needed. A week later, they flew to New York City. It was Emily's first time on a plane. The airport staff were accommodating, and Max handled the experience like a seasoned traveler, walking confidently through security, boarding calmly, and settling at her feet during the flight. Passengers whispered, pointing and smiling, some recognizing the now famous duo from the news. When they arrived at the studio, a team welcomed them warmly. A makeup artist gently brushed Emily's cheeks with a touch of powder, while Max received a new collar with the network's logo as a light-hearted gift. Backstage, Emily heard the muffled voices of anchors preparing for the segment. She could feel the energy in the air, the lights, the cameras, the movement. Then it was time. As the music faded and the host introduced them, Emily walked onto the stage with Max guiding her. The audience applauded, and she felt the vibrations of the clapping through the floor. The host leaned forward with a warm smile. "Emily, thank you for being here. And thank you, Max, for being such a good boy." Emily smiled shyly. "He's more than good," she said softly. "He's everything." They spoke about the day of the accident, how Max had sensed the truck before anyone else, and how he refused her command because something inside him said no. Emily spoke slowly, clearly, and without nerves. She wasn't just telling a story, she was honoring her friend. The host asked, "What would you say to other kids with challenges who may feel like the world doesn't see them?" Emily paused for a moment, then answered, "You don't have to see the world the same way to belong in it. Sometimes, the world doesn't need to see you to be changed by you." The audience fell silent. Then came a long, heartfelt round of applause. After the interview, the show presented Max with a special engraved gold medallion that read, "Max, a hero's heart." The segment went viral. Organizations that worked with guide dogs reached out, thanking Emily for representing their mission with grace. A large non-profit offered to fundraise in Max's name to provide guide dogs to visually impaired children across the country. But through it all, Emily remained grounded. She wasn't seeking fame. She wasn't chasing attention. She was simply grateful. Grateful that Max had been there in that one chilling moment. Grateful that his instincts never failed her. And most of all, grateful that their story, born from silence and a single refused step, was now opening eyes across the world. Months passed, but the moment Max refused to step forward remained etched in Emily's life like a memory carved in stone. Though the excitement of the news stories faded and the cameras moved on, the bond between the girl and her guide dog only deepened with time. Every day, Max continued to walk beside Emily, through school hallways, along sidewalks, in parks where other kids played freely. Max was always there, her silent shadow, her living compass, her anchor. But now when people saw them walking together, they didn't just see a guide dog and a blind girl. They saw trust in motion. Emily began receiving letters, some handwritten, others typed from children she had never met. Many of them were blind or visually impaired like her. They wrote about how they used to be afraid of walking alone, of depending on others, or of being seen as different. But after hearing her story, they no longer felt invisible. One letter read, "Because of you and Max, I asked my parents if I could apply for a guide dog too. I didn't think it was possible until I saw what you did." That letter meant more to Emily than any award, medal, or stage appearance. It meant that what happened that day wasn't just a miracle. It was a message. One morning, while Emily and Max were walking their usual route, a little boy with glasses ran up beside them. His mother followed behind, trying to catch up. "Are you the girl with the dog that saved her?" the boy asked breathlessly. Emily smiled. "That's us." The boy looked at Max with wide eyes. "He's famous," Emily chuckled. "He doesn't care about being famous. He just cares about me." The boy reached out, gently touching Max's back. "I want a dog like him someday." As they parted ways, Emily turned her face toward the sky. She couldn't see the clouds, but she could feel the light on her cheeks. The world might always be dark for her eyes, but it no longer felt heavy. Because Max had given her more than safety, he had given her purpose. At home, life carried on as normally as it could. Her parents still made Sunday pancakes. Her father still told embarrassing jokes. But something had shifted in the way they looked at Emily. It wasn't worry anymore. It was admiration. One evening, Emily sat on the porch steps, her hand resting on Max's head. She had grown taller, her voice slightly deeper, but her words were still soft. "You changed everything, Max," she whispered. "Not just by stopping me that day, but by showing the world that I'm not helpless, that I'm stronger than I thought." Max tilted his head slightly, then rested it in her lap. "I don't know what I would have done without you." And as the porch light flickered on, casting a soft glow across the wooden steps, Emily realized something profound. Max hadn't just saved her life that day. He had given her a story, one that was still unfolding, A story not just about survival, but about courage, trust, and the unseen strength we all carry. Years from now, people might forget the headlines, the internet posts might fade, but Emily would always remember the sound Max made when he refused to move, the way his body blocked hers, like a shield, and how, in that one instant, he became something greater than a guide dog. He became a symbol, not of fear, but of faith, not of blindness, but of vision. And in the quiet of that moment, she whispered what she had whispered so many times before. "Thank you, Max." And Max drew to who he always was, just stayed there, watching over her, silent, steady, forever by her side.